What's up, everybody? This is Dr. Zeb, and welcome to the Rehab Christian Center Tuesday night virtual life study experience. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so grateful that you have joined with us on this awesome Tuesday night. Man, what an incredible message I have to share with you. It's going to get practical and probably be more practical than what it will be tonight. But really going to continue on this theme of faith that we dealt with on Sunday. And man, what a awesome experience we had. And I think you're going to enjoy uh, tonight in a significant way. And so, regardless of the network that you're tuning in on, do me a favor, you should just start liking this video, sharing this video, telling others to tune in. Let them know that the Rehab Christian Center is on the air. And we're going to get right into it. We're going to walk through our networks really quickly. And then we're going to get right into this message tonight because there cannot be a part two to this. No part twos tonight. We got to only deal with this message this week so that we can kind of sort of continue to shift gears next week, really on this path that I'm really feeling led to take us on. And so grateful to see you, those of you that are tuned in, only those of you that are coming on late, and those watching the replay. It's an honor to be here with you tonight. So grateful you've tuned in with us. So I want to walk through the networks. I've got 710. I want to walk through the networks really quickly. And then after that, we're going to dive right into this very awesome experience tonight. And we know that you are going to be tremendously blessed for tuning in. Facebook, good evening to you. Those of you that are tuned in via Facebook, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being with us tonight. If you're on Facebook, do me a favor. I want you to like this video. If you really our ministry, I want you to hit that like button, hold it, turn it to a love button. I want you to hit the share button, hit the tune in tonight, let them know Center is live and on the air tonight. And we would certainly appreciate that right where you are. Brother Jay, good to see you. Instagram, thank you so much. Facebook, Instagram, good evening to you tuning in. I thought about you actually, Brother Jay, on Sunday, and I'm going to be reaching out to you this week. Nothing's wrong. But those of you that are tuned in on Instagram, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. If you're on Instagram, fill it up with hearts. Let us know that you're tuned in. And then not only that, if you're on Instagram, I want you to hit that @ symbol. Make sure you tag 5 of your friends, followers on your friends list, and tell them to tune in on this morning. I'm sorry, on this evening. Wow, the time. On this evening, tune in. But make sure you say also good evening in the chat area. Whether you're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, make sure you speak in the chat area. Let us know that you're tuned in. And then again, hit that @ symbol, tag 5 of your closest friends. And tell them to tune in and let us know that they are tuned in and live on the air. So good evening, Instagram, my late church. It is good to see those of you that are tuned in already virtually, and certainly welcome those of you that are going to be coming in shortly. YouTube, good evening to you. Those of you that are tuned in via YouTube, thank you so much for joining us. If you're watching via YouTube, do me a favor. I want you to make sure you like this video. If you have not subscribed to our channel, you can subscribe to our channel on YouTube at TheREHABCC. That's at TheREHABCC. You can find us on YouTube there. Make sure you subscribe to our channel, like this video, and then hit that share button, and make sure you tag as many people as you can, or share this video with as many people as you can, to let them know that we are on the air and we want to see them on this evening. Man, listen, powerful message that I'm teaching tonight. How to build stronger faith is what we're going to deal with, and it's going to be very practical, as it always is. But again, just so grateful that you've tuned in from wherever you are, and that you've taken a moment to share some of your evening with us during this weekday. It is my hope that your week has been going blessed so far. I know for me, professionally anyway, it has been an incredibly ghetto week, but God is still good, and we're so grateful again just to be here with you. Now, I want you to type in the comments. I got 7:13. I got to jump in. So can't be no part two tonight or next Tuesday. We got to continue to shift gears and move forward. But I want you to type in the comments tonight's subject: how to build stronger faith. Right? How to build stronger faith. I want you to put that in the comments. There can be no part two next Tuesday. That's going to be part one of one tonight on how to build stronger faith. You're going to understand why I'm saying this in just a second. This is an incredibly powerful message that I want to share with you. And it's very practical, and it's really a continuation of what was discussed Sunday in part one of that awesome message. Sunday, Losing is for Winners, was a very powerful introduction to that, what has turned out to be a series. But really, we spent a lot of time Sunday talking about faith, the importance of faith, really as it relates to our lives and the circumstances in our lives and the things that we can expect in our lives. And so I really want to continue with that vein tonight with how to build a stronger faith. I want you to put that in the comments. I want you to record notes in the comments. You're going to be the smartest person, the water cooler all week long, because you have engaged tonight. And again, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. All right. How to build stronger faith is what we're going to deal with. And let's start with, I've got two texts I want to deal with tonight. Let's start first with Hebrews chapter 11, verses 1 through 6. That's in the NIV. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1 through 6 in the NIV is what we're going to start with, all right? Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1 through 6 in the NIV is where we're going to start tonight. How to build stronger faith is what we're going to teach. And again, you're going to be blessed for tuning in on tonight, and I'm so glad that you have. All right, so let's start here. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. Hebrews chapter 11, we're going to read verses 1 through 6. We're going to go through this. I'm going to talk a little bit about this. Then I'm going to give you another text, talk a little bit about that. And then I'm going to give you some points, and I'm done. This is going to be good. Faith is confidence and what we hope for, and assurance about what we don't see, right? Remember, we talked about faith being the substance of. This is so critically important when we talk about faith. We've got to understand in the context of it being substance or the substitute for what we don't have. Faith is the substitute for what we don't have. All right. Faith is the substitute. Record this bullet point right now. Faith is the substitute for what we don't have. And you cannot lose sight of that. Record this. Faith is the substitute for what we don't have. I need you to put that in the comments again. It's going to be powerful this evening. But I want you to again, as Hebrews 11:1 reminds us of what it told us Sunday. When we don't have the things we desire in our lives, we want in our lives, we pray for in our lives, faith then becomes the substitute until those things show up. And so until those things show up, if you don't have the money you pray for, if you don't have the job you pray for, if you don't have the career you pray for, if you don't have the home you pray for, if you don't have the boo you pray for, if you don't have the salvation for your family that you pray for, faith substitute until those things show up. Right. And that's what we learn here in Hebrews 11, verse 1. Verse 2, look at this. This is what the ancients were commended for. By faith, verse 3, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. All right. So the writer here is saying in verse number 3 that it took faith to understand even how the world was made. Right. So if you understand how the world was created in the context of God, it takes faith to even believe that that's true. Right. It takes faith to believe that God walked into a place of total darkness, spoke life into total darkness, created the earth, and then from there begin to develop the world as we see it now. It takes faith to believe that, right? And so that's what the writer here is saying in verse number 3. Look at verse 4. By faith, Abel brought God a better offering than Cain did. By faith, he was commended as righteous when God spoke well of his offerings. And by faith, Abel still speaks even though he is dead. Very interesting context to put in this particular verse. If you know the story of Cain and Abel, and that is in the Old Testament in Genesis, I would highly recommend that you read that. By the way, if you have been, hopefully you've been keeping up with your scripture for the week, which is Romans 5. And it's been a blessing to you. I've been reading it every day, and it's been wonderful to me. But if you read the story of Cain and Abel, you understand what the writer is saying here, and that Abel brings a better sacrifice to God than Cain does. Cain gets jealous and kills Abel. And the Bible says that even though Abel is dead, it is his faith through what he did that causes his name to be alive today. This is so important, right? Because when your faith is right, long you're not on the scene, long after a good season has passed for you. If your faith is right, your faith will keep your name, will keep your promises, your blessings, will keep the things that you're expecting from God. Your faith will keep those things relevant if your faith is right, which is why you should never worry about people forgetting about you, right? When you live your life in a way that is filled with faith, right? Everything you do, everything you go after is connected to your faith. You don't have to worry about being relevant. You don't have to worry about people forgetting you. You don't have to worry about God forgetting you. And that's the most important thing, right? You don't have to worry about God forgetting you. Why? Because your faith keeps you on the mind and heart of God. I want you to record that. This is so good. Your faith keeps you on the mind and heart of God. Record it now. Your faith keeps you on the mind and heart of God. It is your faith that keeps you on God's mind. It is your faith that keeps you in God's heart, on God's heart. It's your faith that keeps you on God's radar. So even when things doesn't seem to be, or don't seem rather, to be moving in your life, it is your faith that keeps you on the mind and heart of God. So if we know that to be the case, I want to challenge you here. If we know that it is our faith that keeps us on the mind and heart of God, prayer is communication with God, but faith keeps us on the mind and heart of God, then this implies to us that you don't have to pray for things over and over and over again. I want to say this again slow. If faith keeps us on the mind and heart of God, and prayer is communication with God, then this implies that you don't have to pray for the same things over and over and over again. Because when you're praying for the same things over and over and over again, you're just simply communicating with God. You're talking to him and you're reminding him, or attempting to remind him over and over and over again of something he already knows. But when you pray, right, the Bible says pray without ceasing, not offer prayers without ceasing. It's not plural, it's singular. When you pray without ceasing, right, and you pray and ask God, seek, ask and it shall be given. Ask, no S on the end. Ask and it shall be given. Seek and you shall find. Knock and the doors open to you, right? These are all words, which implies that all we really got, if our faith is right, that's critical. If our faith is right, all we really got to do is pray and ask God one time. And I want to say this to all of you. If you find yourself asking God for something over and over and over again, it's a good chance that your faith is not where it needs to be. One clear indicator that your faith is not needs to be is if you find yourself asking God for the same thing over and over and over again. I want to ask you tonight, have you been praying the same prayer to God and giving God the same prayer request list for the last 3, 4, 5 weeks, 6 months, 6 years? Have you been doing that? Because if you have, the reason God has not answered your prayer is not because you haven't asked for it. You clearly asked for it. The reason he hasn't answered your prayer is because your faith hasn't come in alignment and into alignment with your prayer. When your faith comes into alignment, this is good. When your faith comes into alignment with what you pray and ask God for, you ain't got to beg it. All you got to do is ask once, and then your faith keeps you on God's heart and mind. Is this making sense to anybody? Right? And so when you really understand how faith and prayer work, then you understand you don't have to keep asking God for stuff. You really don't. I don't, it's rare. It's very rare when I find myself in the business of asking God 5, 6, 7 times for the same thing. Listen, if my faith is right the first time, that's all I got to do. All you got to do is ask once, and then position your faith to hold your spirit, your belief in place until we all see the manifestation of what you've asked for, right? But until then, again, don't keep asking God for the same things over and over again, because this then becomes a clear indication that your faith is not as strong as it needs to be. Your faith is not positioned where it needs to be. And more than that, you have not believed that your faith is enough to keep what you ask for on the heart and mind of God. Is this making sense to anybody tonight? If it is, fill it up with hearts. Put a heart in the comment, put a hand emoji, something. Let me know I'm talking to you tonight. Now, Hebrews 11, verse 5. I'm still moving. Look at this. Hebrews 11, verse number 5. By faith, Enoch was taken from this life so that he did not experience death. He could not be found because God had taken him away. For before he was taken, he was commanded as one who pleased God. Now, the story of Enoch is also another story. I would encourage you to go into Genesis. If you don't know where to find it, just go into Genesis and just type Enoch. I want you to read the story of Enoch. The Bible says that Enoch's life pleased God so much that God did not allow Enoch to experience death. Because his life pleased God so much, God didn't allow him to experience death, but what God did is what's called translate him, meaning he literally came to get Enoch from the earth, and Enoch never experienced the pain or the transition that we call death. He was immediately translated to be up with God, right? And so again, it takes, the writer says here 5, by faith, Enoch was taken from this life. It takes faith to even believe that. So how going in the barbershop? Go here. How do you look like going in the barbershop, the beauty salon tomorrow? Talking about, girl, God took this dude named Enoch, and he didn't even die. He just came down and went and took him right back up in the sky. Folk gonna look at you like, what? Right? It takes, the writer says here, verse 5, it takes faith to believe that not only that, but that God is able to. About what happened with in verse number 4. It's not about what happened with Enoch in verse number 5, as much as it is what happens in verse number 6, because what the writer is doing an excellent job of doing in Hebrews 11 is setting you up to understand that with God, all things are possible. That's the greater thing. The greater lesson is not about what God did to the world, how he created the world out of darkness, or how God continues to allow Abel's name to live now because his sacrifice was greater than Cain, or how God took Enoch and translated him and did not allow him to experience death. Those things are great. The greater point that the writer's trying to get here is that with faith, literally, all things are possible. I want you to record that now. With faith, literally, all things are possible. Come on, record it. With faith, all things are possible. That's the point of the story. Point of the story, the way the writer describes it for us here, the point of the story is to remind us that if God did all of these things, and we can believe those things through faith, it's the same God that can perform literal miracles in your life, right? This is so important. If God did all of those things, this is the same God that can perform the same miracles in your life, but it requires faith. Look at this, Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6. I'm done with this text, and then we're going to go to another text, and I'm going to give you a scenario to really make you understand faith and how this works. Look at Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6. I'm in the NIV. And without faith, here we go, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. This is critical. Number one, you can't please God without faith. And number two, you can't say you got faith if you don't believe that God exists. So people who walk around talking about something they got faith, but they don't believe in God is an oxymoron, because the Bible tells us here that it is even impossible to believe that God exists and that he's a rewarder of people who seek him if you don't first, or I'm sorry, it's impossible to believe that God can do these great things if you don't first believe that he exists and he rewards those who earnestly seek him, right? So all of these people that walk around, saying that they believe these miracles and these things can happen for their lives, that God can do these things, but they don't really fully believe in God for real. They got questions about, God existing. Is it possible for there to be a God? You cancel absolutely everything that you could hope for in God with that speckle of doubt that he even exists. And Hebrews 11, I'm still in Romans in my mind. Hebrews 11, verse 6 really sets the stage for us to understand this. It is one of the powerful verses. I learned it in the King James and not the NIV. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. And he that believes him or comes to him must believe, first of all, that he is, and he's a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. That's the way we were taught it in Sunday school. And it's a powerful way, because when we understand that verse, we understand that nothing you could ever believe God for even counts until you first fully believe in who he is. Y'all, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I want to say this to you. It could be that some of you are not seeing breakthroughs in your life. You're not seeing things happen in your life. You're not seeing things happen for you, because even though you grew up in church, your grandma took you to church, and mom and daddy took you to church, you grew up in the church, you grew up around church people, you may have grown into that thing. But if you really, truly, deep down in your heart do not believe that God is who he is, I say this every Sunday, right? The whole idea of being saved starts with, number one, recognizing. It starts with Hebrews 11:6. You can't even say you saved if you don't believe in God. How? If you don't believe in God, what are you saved from? Who saved you? Right? And there are people, y'all, I have friends who are Christians. I have friends who are atheists. I have friends who don't even go to church. I have friends who don't even believe in God now. I have friends who grew up raised in church and now don't believe God. I got friends all across the board. I got friends that are Catholic, Baptist, Methodist. I've got an Episcopalian friend, a Lutheran. I've got friends across the board. And you'd be surprised people who say they saved, but they don't even believe God exists. Who in the heck saved you? Who saved you? Right? You can't even believe in salvation unless you believe in God. So I say this every Sunday, right? When I open up the church and say, who wants to be saved? And I say, I quote Romans 10:9, because Romans 10:9 really is a reflection of what's being said in Hebrews 11:6. And that is, we can't even position ourselves for God to save us if we don't really believe that he lived, died, rose again from the grave for our sins. You got to believe that. And guess what, y'all? That happened over 2,000 years ago. It takes faith to believe that. Are y'all listening to the old man? Am I making sense at all tonight? It takes faith to believe that all of that stuff happened when you weren't even here to experience it yourself. It takes faith. So, man, I ain't got time to deal with this, but I got to hurry. Let me just say this, y'all. Let me see who can be honest with me tonight. We have a lot of people watching live tonight. I'm sure we'll have many people watch the replay, share the video, of course. But let me ask y'all this. Have y'all ever been in a position, especially as you were growing as a believer, where you could not prove to other people that God was real? How many of you would be honest enough to admit, by a show of a hand, that you have not, there have been times as you were growing in your faith as a believer that you could not even prove to people that God was real? And it's okay. I was there initially as a believer, and I was raised in church, right? Because, I was raised in church. I was raised around believers. But the thing is, when you're talking to somebody who doesn't believe in God, telling them God exists just because you say so ain't enough. Y'all don't like this. Telling people who don't believe in God that God exists just because you say so is not enough. People don't want to hear just because you say so, right? And so it is Hebrews 11:6. It is Romans 10:9 that really helps to enforce us. Listen, we believe in God because it takes faith to believe that a power greater than us has created everything that we are experiencing in this world, including our lives, and we've never touched him. We've never laid a finger on him. We've never seen him face to face. The Bible tells us that we can't even see God face to face and live. We've never even seen him face to face. And yet our being, our existence, how we move about, how we live, how we breathe, how we operate in our lives is fully based on the belief, higher power by the name of God created everything that we are experiencing. And it takes faith to believe that he did it, and when we won't here to experience it ourselves. Y'all listening to me tonight, man? This is so, are y'all listening to me? Right? And so you've got to understand in verse number 6, you can't even please God if you ain't got faith. God gets no pleasure out of your life if you don't have faith. How could he? He cannot get pleasure out of your life if you don't have faith, because you can't even believe that he exists if you don't have faith. Are y'all listening to me? He can't get pleasure out of your life if you don't have faith, because you can't believe he exists if you don't have faith. This is making sense, y'all? I feel like I'm in Sunday school, but this is the way we learn faith in Sunday school, and it was powerful. All right. And so again, it is impossible to please God without faith. And anybody that comes to God that says, listen, I want to be saved, I want to dedicate my life to Christ, must first believe that he is, in other words, that he exists, and that he rewards those that seek him. If you believe he exists and that he can bless you if you seek after him, that's all it takes to please God. That's it. Is this making sense to anybody? Fill it up with hearts if it's making sense tonight. Man, I really wish I could teach this for hours. This is a good foundational message. This is one of those messages that as a believer, there's certain topics you ought to be able to talk about. You ought to be able to talk about baptism. You ought to be able to talk about being baptized in the Holy Spirit or the Holy Ghost. You ought to be able to talk about faith. You ought to be able to talk about the importance of giving. These are things that you ought to be able to talk about. And the reason why that's important is because these things are cornerstones to your faith as a believer, right? It is your cornerstone as your faith, as a cornerstone rather of your faith as a believer. Right? If you need to go back and watch this replay several times this week, I want you to do it, because you need to understand the impact of faith on just how you live as a believer. No faith, you can't be a believer. It's that simple. You can quote anything you want to. You can grab the preacher's hand. You can cry. You can do all of that. But if you don't have the faith to believe that God exists, you ain't a believer. It's that simple, right? It starts there, right? You got to believe in a power that you can't see, that's bigger than who you are, that you've never met, that has literally created the foundation of everything you experience in your life. Man, this is so good to me. Making sense to anybody? All right. And so this is what you have to believe as a believer. Now, let's go to this, because I thought about something Sister Michelle said in the comments, and it was perfect alignment with tonight and talking about how to build stronger faith. Let's go to Matthew chapter 17, verse 14 through 16. I'm in the NIV. Let me type that because I like to have that in my notes here. I'm in the NIV, St. Matthew chapter 17, verse 14 through 20. I want to read those verses, give you a little example of how this all connects, then I'm done, right? St. Matthew chapter 17, I might have St. Matthew chapter 17, verse 14 through 20. I'm in the the NIV, the New International Version translation. You type that in the comments. St. Matthew chapter 17, verse number 14 through 20. All right? Get that for me quickly. Put it in the comments so that everybody can follow along with what you read. Let's look at this and see what this says. Not saying. Verse 1. When they came to the crowd, a man, verse 14. There we go. Verse 14. When they came to the crowd, a man approached Jesus and knelt before him. Right? The story that's happening here. Look at verse 15. Lord, have mercy on my son, he said. He has seizures and he is suffering greatly. He often falls into the fire or into the water. Verse 16. I brought him. This is a man talking to Jesus. I brought him to your disciples, but they could not heal him. Verse 17. You unbelieving and perverse generation, Jesus replied. Look at this. How long shall I stay with you? How long should I put up with you? Bring the boy here to me. The $1 million question. This is so good. In verse number 17, St. Matthew chapter 17, verse 17, is who is Jesus talking to when after the man says to him, I brought up my son to your disciples, he couldn't heal him, right? So in verse 16, St. Matthew chapter 17, verse 16, the man brings his son to Jesus and he tells Jesus, I brought my son to your disciples, they couldn't heal him. In verse 17, Jesus says, you unbelieving and perverse generation, and then says, how long shall I stay with you? How long should I put up with you? Bring the boy here to me. The $1 million question again is Jesus talking to the people? Is he talking to the disciples or is he talking to everybody? I want to say this. It is my humble opinion that Jesus in this verse is talking to everybody. And let me tell you why. Because if you are a disciple of Jesus Christ, you ought to have the same kind of faith to be able to perform the same miracles that your master Jesus Christ performed. The Bible says that not only will we be able to perform miracles, but we'll be able to perform the same miracles. When you become a believer, you have the power, the ability, and should have the faith to understand that the same way Jesus raised the sick from the dead, if your faith is right, you can see dead bodies raised around you when people die around you. Now, I know y'all don't believe in this, and that's fine. But let me tell you something. I was raised in a church where literally the power of God would fall so hard that people would be in wheelchairs. And when the service was over, they would be up walking around. I ain't talking about this stuff you see on that movie. I can't think of the movie. What's the name of the movie where the guy was performing miracles under a tent? What is the next? Steve? I think his name is Steve something. The guy was he was like a preacher and he was performing miracles under the tent, and he had people acting like they were, lame. Leap of faith. That's it, right? Steve Martin, I think is his name. I ain't talking about no Steve Martin situation where you set in the crowd and you setting it up so people can act like they got miracles. I'm talking about I grew up in church where literally I saw people pass out, and literally they would pass out, stop breathing. They would stop the service. The elders and people would come and lay their hands on that person and they would get up and be just fine. I'm not making this up. And if many of you can probably relate to this too, you probably saw this growing up in church as well. So when I say what the Bible clearly tells us, that when Jesus tells his disciples, look, the same miracles I perform, you should be able to perform if you got my spirit and you got the faith. The same thing applies to your life. So Jesus, when he says in verse number 17, you unbelieving and perverse generation, he talking about everybody. He talking about the man who brought his son, because here's the thing. If your kid is sick and you're a believer, y'all ready for this? If your kid is sick and you're a believer, you ought to have the faith to believe that your child can be healed. Say this again. If your kid is sick and you're a believer, you ought to have the faith that your kid can be healed. It doesn't mean you don't have to take him to the hospital, right? Faith without works is dead. When you take him to the hospital, God has put conditions in place to evaluate us here on earth, and that doesn't mean you believe in God yet. It doesn't mean that at all. Now, I'm going to say this. This may offend some of y'all, but understand this. I know this for a fact. When my grandmama was alive, my grandmama used to talk about how folks didn't even take their medicine when they grew up. Now, I'm not recommending that. Just listen to me. Just listen to what I'm trying to say here. She talked about how the older saints didn't even take their medicine wrong. They would go to the doctor and get medicine, and they believed in God more than the medicine that the doctor gave them. And many of those folks who come into church, believe in God, having faith, would be healed and never even have to take the medication that the doctor prescribed to them. Y'all don't believe this stuff, do you? I know. Y'all, this generation doesn't believe none of this stuff. And you know why? Because we got a lot of technology and we ain't got no faith. You ain't got to believe in God for nothing when all you got to do is Google it. Y'all not listening to what the old man's saying. You don't have to believe in a whole lot of nothing now when all you got to do is Google it. Now, instead of y'all praying when you get a headache, you get a headache right here on the left side of your forehead. Instead of you praying and asking God to heal it, like our grandmothers and great-grandmothers and grandfathers and great-grandfathers did, because they didn't have Google. So they had to rely on prayer. They had to rely on faith. You know what some of y'all do? You get a headache over your left eyebrow. And what do? You go right to your phone. What does it mean to have a headache over left eyebrow? Now tell me I'm lying. If I went through some of your search histories right now on your phone, many of the things you could have prayed for are in your search history on Google. Tell me I'm lying. Somebody tell me I'm lying. I'm waiting. I know I'm telling the truth. Why? Because I've been I've been guilty of it. Let me tell you, I don't like going to the doctor. I don't. I hate going to the emergency room. Though where I live, we got a relatively new hospital here, and the emergency room wait. I think the longest I've ever waited in that emergency room was maybe like 2 hours. And this was pre-COVID. But any other than that, this emergency room, you can get in and get out. So if I really wanted to go get checked out something, I can get in and get out of there. I don't even like going to the emergency room. I'm like none of that. And I'm gonna tell you, if I start feeling weird in a spot, I have been guilty of, instead of praying, going right to my phone. Pain on right side of hip. What does that mean? And I'm reading. Oh, that ain't nothing serious. I'm good. Yeah. Who else am I talking to here? I'm not telling any lies here. And so we can't criticize the older generation, our grandmothers, grandfathers, those folks, great-grandmothers, great-grandfathers, who didn't have as much technology, but their faith was next level. Why? Because every single day, every single opportunity they had, they exercised their faith. I want you to record it. Every chance you have, you must exercise your faith. Right? I'm going to come back to this whole idea of exercise in a second. We'll make it make sense, and then I'm done. Every chance you have, you must exercise your faith. You got to exercise your faith. Stop relying on technology. Stop relying on people. Stop relying on your own strength, and learn how to exercise your own faith. Something's not making sense, even if you're going to research it later. Before you research it, go to God. Pray. Ask Him to give you guidance, instruction, direction. Have the faith to know that He heard your prayer, and then go on. Are y'all listening to me? Right? So you gotta position yourself every chance you get to exercise your faith. Because the more you exercise your faith, the stronger your faith becomes. People don't have weak faith, not because God ain't able, and because they ain't able. People don't have weak faith because they exercise their faith about as much as they do sit-ups and push-ups every day. And I'm gonna come back to that in a second. All right, look at this. Verse number 18. St. Matthew chapter 17, verse 18, NIV. Look at verse number 18. Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of the boy, and he was healed at that moment. So Jesus was able to ascertain that the boy was having seizures, all this stuff, because he had a demon in him. Jesus rebuked the demon in verse 18, and he tells all of them that they are unbelievers and they are perverse generation, lays them out, says, bring me the boy, and then he rebukes the demon, and the boy is healed on the spot. Look at verse 19. Then the disciples came to Jesus in private and asked, why couldn't we drive it out? Now, I really wish I could say this. I was reading, and the startling thing about this story that jumped out, that probably never jumped out to me before, is the fact that when Jesus performs the miracle, instead of the disciples asking Jesus in front of the people why we couldn't do it, the disciples told Jesus in private. And so I'm reading this, and I'm like, why would the disciples, whom everybody knew was Jesus' Lord, so they should have had power like Jesus, they should have had the faith, they should have had the ability to cast out devils, they should have had the ability to lay hands on the sick and watch them recover, they should have all this ability. If everybody knew that these were his disciples and they were supposed to have this ability, why did they pull Jesus to the side to ask him, hey, master, why couldn't we drive it out? And I got a question. I got an answer for you. And this is going to blow you away. You know why? Because nothing exposes your deficiencies. Nothing exposes your deficiencies, your flaws, your shortcomings, your failures. Watch this. Like public embarrassment. I don't have time to deal with this. Nothing exposes your flaws and deficiencies like public embarrassment. Let me make this make sense in plain English, because I don't feel like I'm explaining this good tonight and that I'm losing y'all. Have you ever had somebody say to you, listen, you got something to say to me, to me, about something I did, something I whatever. And when something goes down, don't ask me on the spot. Pull me to the side and ask me in private. Has anybody ever said that to you before? Now, on the surface, that sounds commendable. On the surface, when somebody says, hey, listen, you got a problem with me, don't bring it out when you see me in public. Just pull me to the side and then, tell me what your problem is. That sounds great on the surface, okay? And in some contexts, that is very necessary, i.e., if I'm speaking in front of a crowd of people and somebody walks in that I got a problem with, I wouldn't over the pulpit, on the mic, over the pulpit, address that person in front of everybody, right? Because that person, even if I had an issue with that person didn't commit the issue in that location, right? That person already committed the issue. They showed up in my environment. So to address them publicly on the stage would completely be out of order. And, this has turned a lot of people away from church. People have been singled out. I know people who were singled out by pastors in front of a whole congregation of people over something that happened yesterday or last year or whenever. It didn't happen at that moment. And that's not an appropriate way to handle things, right? You don't use your stage and microphone and platform to beat people up. So that's inappropriate, right? Right, Lori, don't be a Will Smith, right? That's inappropriate. But the Bible tells us in Proverbs chapter 27, here we go. This is where I'm gonna get in trouble. Bible tells us in Proverbs chapter 27, right around verse 5 or 6, it says that open rebuke is better than secret love. Open rebuke is better than secret love. And so I want to submit to you that the disciples here in this particular verse, St. Matthew chapter 17, verse 19, who come to Jesus and say, hey, privately, why couldn't we do this? I want to say that they did it, not only, number one, because they were embarrassed, but number two, they did not want to be rebuked in public. And this was a flaw of the disciples, because let me tell you something. If you can endure chastisement publicly, you are prepared to be promoted publicly. I want you to record this. I feel like running around my house. If you can endure chastisement publicly, you are ready to be blessed publicly. This is how I know some of y'all ain't ready to be blessed. You get mad when people comment negatively on your posts. You get mad when people don't agree with what you put on Facebook. You arguing with folk, complete strangers you ain't never met, who have commented on your posts on Instagram and Twitter, and you in a whole full-fledged argument with folks you have never met. And that's proof that you can't take public chastisement. And if you can't handle public chastisement, you're not prepared for public promotion. I shared a video that I recorded for YouTube. I'm back on YouTube. I've got so much content to share. We're talking about a lot of different things. And man, just so excited about the season that I'm in. And I didn't even know it because I hadn't been on my YouTube channel for about a month. And the last video that I did, talking about Kevin Samuels and that stuff, had 1,800 viewers. This is the most views I've ever got on a video. And I will admit, I don't do a great job of promoting myself. And that's something I'm working on. I suck at self-promotion. I always have. I was like, wow, 1.8K views. That's a lot for me. and so I started reading some of the comments. It was about 11, 12 comments. And there were people on there that didn't have nice things to say. Sir, I don't agree with you. You're not making no sense. Sir, this. Sir, I don't understand why it took you that long to get the point out, blah, blah, blah. And then there were people on there defending me. Hey, he made perfect sense. I agree with him. He was spot on. When I read the comments, I was so excited because the public chastisement didn't bother me. See, people want to be famous, but you don't want to be talked about. People want to be known, but you don't want to be talked about. People want to lead and be up front, but you don't want to be criticized. And see, so I really believe that the disciples pulled Jesus aside, but they weren't ready to be publicly embarrassed, to be publicly chastised. And if you cannot handle public chastisement, you're not ready for public promotion. Y'all need to record it. Ain't nobody record that yet. If you can't handle public chastisement, you're not ready for public promotion. Record it. If you cannot handle public chastisement, that's Proverbs 27, verse 5 and 6. If you can't handle public chastisement, you're not ready for public promotion. You might as well stay on the level that you're at. Because I'm telling you, the more you are exposed to public, the more you will find yourself being chastised in public. You're going to be criticized in public. Everybody don't like anything I post. Don't like anything I say. And what they can't say is, Deb's transparent. One thing they can't say is Deb's not transparent. He's not authentic. He doesn't tell it like it is. No, all of those things are true. And they will forever be true. But with that is a cost. It's a price that most people aren't willing to pay. And we see here that the disciples were not willing to pay that price. Are y'all listening to me? Now, I hope Sister Michelle is still on the line because I've got something to ask the question. She asked the question Sunday about this, and we're going to get to this, right? So, these are the type of things Jesus in private and asked him. I'm in Matthew chapter 17, verse 19. I got to hurry up and run out of time. Then the type of things Jesus asked him, why couldn't we drive it out? Look at verse 20. Look at Jesus' answer in verse 20. He says to them in verse 20, he replied, because you have so little faith. Truly I say to you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. That's the whole word. I like that. I like the way the writer used that word. I preached that before. Nothing is impossible for you. And man, it's a powerful word. Look at what the writer says before that. Listen, y'all couldn't drive out this demon because your faith was small. Because your faith is small, I'm telling you now, all it really takes is faith the size of a mustard seed. You can look at a mountain, move a mountain out the way, and it's going to move. Why? Because with the right faith, nothing is impossible. Are y'all following me? Now, let's think about this. Because Sister Michelle asked, I don't know if she's still on the line yet Sunday. Dr. Jed, can you explain mustard seed? Like, why a mustard seed? What's that all about? Well, if you know anything about seeds, and if you've done any research on this, mustard seeds are one of the smallest seeds that exist. They are one of the smallest seeds that exist, but mustard seeds, when they grow and become what they will become, plant, a tree, they grow into larger than life figures. So the whole idea of Jesus saying, if you have the faith the size of a mustard seed, you can speak to a mountain and move it. Mustard seed this small, mountain that big. So your small mustard seed faith can move a large mountain. It really becomes in alignment with what a mustard seed becomes when it grows into fruition. A mustard seed, one of the smallest seeds that exist, grows into a very large plant and a very large tree, which says that if we have just that size of faith, has the ability to grow into something larger than what we can imagine. Does this make sense to anybody? Right? So I know you've heard that in church, right? Faith the size of a mustard seed, and you never really understood what that meant. But the whole idea behind mustard seed faith is that with a mustard seed being one of the smallest seeds that exists, it only takes that much faith to move significant mountains in your life. Some of you begin to question your value, your spiritual growth, your spiritual faith when life challenges the faith that you have. You're human. Life can beat you up enough to the point where you begin to challenge even your own faith. That doesn't make you abnormal. That doesn't make you weird. That makes you human. But understand this, that when you understand that all it takes is really just a little bit of faith to see significant results in your life, then you recognize it only takes a little bit to move a whole lot. All right. So that's the point behind mustard seed faith. It only takes a little bit to move a whole lot. And when you get that, you realize you ain't got to have a lot of strength to see results in your life. You don't have to have a lot of strength. You don't always, this is going to challenge some of you theologically, but listen to me. You don't even have to always feel good to see results in your life. You don't. You don't have to have a lot of faith to see results in your life. You don't have to always feel good to see results in your life. None of those things have to happen. Why? Because if we've got small mustard seed faith, we can see extraordinary results in our life. Does that make sense? Now, let me attend this exercise quickly and then I'm done. Let me record this. Your faith is built the same way muscles are built. Your faith is built the same exact way muscles are built. The same way people build muscles is the same way you build faith. What do you mean, Dr. Deb? This is what I mean. You build muscles high through intentionality with a purpose. You don't start working out and say, hey, I'm going to work out. I ain't got nothing to do. You decide to work out why. You want to lose the baby. Just lose food fat, whatever. You want to get in better shape. You want to feel better. You want better test results when you go to the doctor. You want better blood work. You want your blood to circulate better. There's a lot of different reasons why people work out and exercise. But you start working out with intentionality, with a set purpose. I'm going to work out. I'm going to exercise because I have this purpose or this goal in mind. Faith works the same way. You don't exercise your faith randomly. You exercise faith with a purpose. I'm believing God for this because of this, because I need this. I desire this. I'm expecting this, right? It's intentionality, and faith without intentionality can't work. You have to assign some intentionality behind your faith. It's one thing to say you believe God. It's another thing to say you believe God for something, and here's why, right? That puts a purpose, that puts a goal, that puts intentionality behind your faith, right? So your faith is built the same way your muscles are built. They're built how? 1, through intentionality. 2, through effort. You got to do something. Faith without works is dead. You can believe you're going to lose weight all day, but until you get in there and do some sit-ups, until you get in there and do some push-ups, until you put down the Krispy Kreme donuts and ride by Krispy Kreme when the hot and now sign is on, you are not going to see results through your effort. You've got to put in real effort. You've got to do something. You got to exercise. You got to sacrifice what you want to eat sometimes. You got to eat healthier. You got to watch your calories. You've got to be mindful of what you drink. You got to be mindful of when you eat, how much you eat. You got to be mindful of all of these things. And these things akin themselves to effort. You've got to put in effort to see results when it comes to faith. The same way you got to put in effort to see abs, the same way you got to put in efforts to see these guns I got on my arm, is the same way you got to put in effort to see faith create results in your life. And without it, not going to see what it is that you're looking for. Does this make sense to anybody? All right. And then thirdly, if we say faith is built the same way muscles are built, faith is not only built through intentionality and effort, It's built through diligence, i.e., consistency. And this is for all of you that tried to do 50 push-ups the week before you went on vacation and thought you was going to get a surprise when you put on your bathing suit. So the surprise is it's going to take more than 50 push-ups, and it's going to take more than 50 sit-ups the week before you go on vacation. Ain't no need of me going in here killing myself for a week before I go on vacation, thinking that if I just work out this week before I leave, I'm going to see results when I get on the beach. It don't work that way. And faith is the same way. Faith is something you have to apply consistently. Come on, y'all. I want you to record that. Faith is something you must apply consistently. You don't apply faith when it's convenient for you. You don't apply faith when you feel like it. You don't apply faith when it works for you. You don't apply faith when things are working well. You don't apply faith when you're in a good mood. You apply faith consistently. Trust me, this morning when I got up, I was mad. I had an attitude coming down the steps, coming down here to work out. Why? Because I did not feel like working out at all. I was tired. I'm still trying to recover from Disney World and that humid weather in Florida. I'm still tired. I still wanted to eat the foods I wanted to eat. All that stuff was in place. But what made me get up was understanding that I'm diligent and consistent in my working out. Even when I don't feel like it. Seeing results in your life when you apply faith ain't really about how you feel. It's about your ability. It's about your consistency. And some of you aren't seeing results, not because you can't eat. You ain't seeing results because you ain't consistent. Nope, not consistent. You ain't consistent in your faith. You ain't seeing results in that. You ain't consistent in how you treat people. You're not seeing results in your relationship. You're not seeing results in your marriage. You're not seeing results in your business relationship. You're not consistent in your habits. You're not seeing results in how you're trying to change your life, change your attitude, change your perspective, change your heart. You're not seeing results. You know, you journal one time in the last 6 months, and you're wondering why you have not been able to put in the work on yourself to become a better person. One time in 6 months ain't gonna be enough. You've got to be consistent if you want to see results. You've got to be diligent, detailed, consistently detailed if you want to see results in your life. And faith works the same way. Even when I don't feel like working out, if I work out anyway, I can see results. Even when I don't feel like believing God, if I believe God anyway and apply my faith anyway, I can see results. It's the same methodology. And so if we understand that in the context of working out, we understand it in the context of exercise, we got to understand that in the context of our faith. You have to be able to exercise your faith regardless of what's going on in your life, regardless of the circumstances in your life, regardless of what's up against you in your life. Whether you feel like having faith or you don't feel like having faith, whether the odds are stacked low, so it's easy to have faith, or the odds are stacked really high and it's hard to have faith. You've got to have consistent, diligent faith if you want to see consistent results in your life. And until then, it ain't going to happen. And the same way you can expect muscles in your arms, pecs on your chest, fellas, ladies, flat stomachs, nice glutes, when you exercise because you do it regularly, the same way you have that expectation through exercise is the same way you can have the same expectation for things to happen in your life when you consistently, diligently, with effort and intentionality, apply faith to your life. This bless anybody, y'all? I'm done. This bless anybody today at all? If it did, fill it up with hearts. Let me know. I'm telling you, this is a very practical message. Those of you that just tuned in, you need to go back and watch this message. Those of you that watched it all, you need to put this message on replay and really go back and listen to what I said tonight about faith, because faith is such a cornerstone. Faith is such the cornerstone. Many things, so many things that we can expect to receive in our lives. And I'm telling you, you can be talented, gifted, you can have great resources, you can have influence in your community, influence in your business. But let me tell you something. There comes a day where your influence is not enough. There comes a day where your connection is not enough. There comes a day where who you know and who knows you is not enough. It requires having a cornerstone of faith in your life to see consistent results in your life. Listen, I want to say, you got a prayer request. quickly. I want you to type in your prayer request in the comments right now. If you got something you want me to pray for, I want you to type it in the comments now. Maybe you got a prayer request we can't see. You can't put it in the comments. You can email your prayer request. info@rehabcc.org. Y'all listen to me Sunday. I got more prayer requests that came through the inbox this week, and I've seen them. I have not responded to all of them yet. But I'm really appreciative of those of you that have emailed prayer requests this week, because again, I'm up 4:30 in the morning. I get up, I pray over your prayer requests, whether I feel like it or not. Right? We just talked about that. Whether the mornings where it's very hard for me to get up as well. But my faith has to be greater than my environment. My faith has to be greater than my present circumstance. And you operate the same way. So you can email it to info@rehabcc.org, put in the subject line prayer request, or simply type your prayer request here in the chat, whether you're watching live or watching replay. And we will certainly see that, especially as we go back and watch the replay. We try to do it every Tuesday night or at least Wednesday. We go back and re-listen to both our Sunday and Tuesday messages, because we want to not only listen to what's been taught, because oftentimes I'm teaching to myself, but what we also want to make sure that we see and acknowledge those prayer requests and keep them in the pits of our heart all week long. Listen, connect your hands like this. I'm way over. But if you would oblige to connect your hands like this, the silence on your face. If you would touch and agree with me, let's pray together. Father, in Jesus' name, thank you tonight for your word. Thank you for this time of gathering and sharing. You've given us, I pray, something was said that has empowered somebody to have stronger faith in you. We thank you, Father, because we recognize tonight that without faith, it is even impossible to pray this prayer. And without faith, it's impossible to believe that you hear us, that you exist, and that you hear us. Thank you, God, for giving us the faith to become the cornerstone of our lives, cornerstone of everything that we believe for, the cornerstone of everything that we believe for. Thank you for giving us the faith to believe you, to acknowledge you, so that we can see great things and tremendous things happening in our lives. Now, God, every prayer request has been typed in the comments. Every prayer request has been emailed right, and we lift them up to you and ask you to answer the prayers of your people as only you can. Make ways out of no way. Open doors, meet needs, grant hearts' desires in a special way. Somebody this week gone has a very challenging situation going on in their family, that's going on in their career, their finances, in their health, in their mental well-being. God, we lift these people up to you now. You know who they are. You know what their needs are, their desires are. We lift them up to you. Ask that you would answer the prayers and needs of your people. And but while you're answering, give them the discernment, the understanding, to understand the impact of faith. That while we wait on you, our job is to believe that it's already done. We believe tonight, God, that these things are already done, and we count them done in Jesus' name. Amen. Listen, you prayed that prayer of faith. I want you to type in the comments right. It is so. It is so. Yes, we're praying for your migraine situation. You've been dealing with migraines for a very long time. I've known you. And for migraines, that God blesses you, strengthens you. Praying for all of you, whatever your situation is, that God will continue to answer the prayers that you have. And I want you to know that it is faith that keeps you. Again, you know what I said earlier. It is faith that keeps you on the heart and mind of God. And I'm so happy to know that you're on the heart and mind. Quickly tonight, if this message, if this ministry has been a blessing to you, it's been a challenge you to do, you can give one of three ways. You can give via CashApp, dollar sign, REHABCCGIVE. That's dollar sign, REHABCCGIVE. You can get through our website, www.rehabcc.org, and choose online, or you can text REHABWORKS to 336-642-3210. Again, that's REHABWORKS to 336-642-3210. Again, you can give one of three ways: via Cash App, dollar sign, REHABCCGIVE, our website, www.rehabcc.org, and choose online giving. Or you can text REHABWORKS to 336-642-3210 and write to your cell phone. You'll get a prompt. You can follow that prompt, or you can give right from your phone, and we know God will bless you. Listen, I said it Sunday, I'll say it again. Thank you so much for those of you that continue to give your tithes, continue to give your offerings. Our numbers fluctuate from week to week. But just as I was sharing with someone on yesterday, I will remind all of you, everything works together for the good of them that come. And man, I'm so excited, not only for this season, but the next season in my life. I hope you feel the same. And I certainly feel that way about rehab and just what I'm going to do for us. And so thank you so much continuing to do, continuing to sow and do. And we know things are going to work out just fine. And I'm just so grateful for all of you. Listen, y'all, I love y'all. I'm praying for y'all. I'm rooting for y'all to have a fantastic week. Meet me here this Sunday for part 2 of Losing is for Winners. It's going to be powerful. If you have not watched part 1, I need you to go back and binge watch Sunday. It was awesome. You're going to build on Sunday's topic, main point of emphasis of faith. Keep moving that series on forward. I got a feeling that's going to be a 3-part series, but we will see. But I can't wait to see you this Sunday, 9:08 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here at the Rehab Christian Center on all of our networks. And make sure you like this video, share this video with as many people as you can. And I know God's going to bless you. Listen, I love y'all. I'm praying for you. I love y'all, Sister Tatum. It's so good to see you virtually. I absolutely love y'all. And make no mistake about it. I really do. I just can say thank you enough to those of you that continue to ride with me. I'm riding with you too. And man, this will pay off. I really got a feeling the concept of something good. And just so grateful for all of you. Listen, y'all, I'm getting long. I love you. I'm praying for you, rooting for you. Have a fantastic and blessed week. I'll see you this Sunday, 9:08 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Love you, praying for you. Peace and blessings.
For watching the Rehab Christian Center live experience. If this broadcast has been a blessing to you and you would like to be a blessing to our leader, Dr. Zeb Talley III, you can sow a seed into his ministry by CashApp at $Pastor ZT3. It is our prayer that this message of hope encourage, enlighten, and empower you to be better. Please tune in Sunday at 9:08 a.m. for our Sunday morning experience. And as always, be blessed and have a wonderful week.